Gray is utterly dumbfounded and confused as he is unaware of who he is or wherever he was at the time. All he remembers is that he was a king, and he was in his room a while ago. Is he dead? How did he die? Was he poisoned? All of these questions remain rhetorical, as many people want him dead anyway, apparently because of his fame and title as a king. Everything that is happening is enough to mess with an individual, as Gray is totally confused as to why he is in a tunnel. He is supposed to be in his palace, ordering his chiefs and also seeing that everything in his domain is running smoothly. What exactly has changed with him? Is that what death looks like, or is it even a dream? Gray could not answer any of these questions. To his surprise, it seemed he had just been given birth to. The tunnel was probably his mother's womb. He can hear the congratulatory message of his mother gets and also the soothing comment of his father. He feels very light and different from his normal self. A whole king in a baby's form. How is he to make do with that? It seemed like he has been transported to the past in a much more archaic period. He's not even certain if it was a rebirth or something. He's confused as to how different his new world is. He's unable to imagine the change in his physique as he now totally looks like the baby that he's supposed to be. His father Reynolds can only adore his little boy and his sex as a boy, while his mother Alice is grateful to him. They both take up the responsibility of raising their little boy, who considers himself an adult. In his thoughts, he finds the carriage of a baby ridiculous. He was a king for crying out loud, and he would not have himself treated less of how a king should be treated. His parents, on the other hand, only see him as an adorable baby whom they want to shower all their love and attention on. Gray, to himself, does not need any of this. He is bent on growing quickly or even going back to his former world. Gray feels he can protect himself, even as he has just arrived in the world, and all the baby treatments are unnecessary. The fact that he is always tossed around like a ball is infuriating to him, because how dare his parents toss a king? Gray searches for answers to all his questions, but finds none, and so he decides to settle for whatever it is and get adapted to how things are done in this new world. Living in a small house instead of his comfort zone, the palace is not a problem for him, as discovering new things is already enough. He began to adapt to new things that were happening around him, and he also took time to observe with scrutiny the difference between this world and his previous world. Gray still cannot believe that he was a king in his past life, and to think that he also led armies, and he's now made to live like a toddler? His chiefs, the beautiful ladies, the palace attention, and his robe. None of these matters in the present world. His parents gave him a name, which is Arthur. They always shorten it whenever he is to be addressed. They address him mostly as Art. He thinks Art is a little too cute for him considering his personality in his previous life. They would probably have thought of something fierce such as Gray or Shalzar. Later that night, Alice kisses him to bed, but he creeps into the library they have at home to study and explore. He sees different books, one of which contains details about his new world. Dicathan, the continent he was born on, presently comprises 3 major kingdoms. The first is Eleanor, the even kingdom deep in the forest. The second is Darv, the vast underground kingdom and home of the dwarves. The third is Sapin, the human kingdom, and is easily the most populated region. This world and his previous world share the same monarchy system. However, the rulership is passed down rather than carried. The world in which Arthur is born is vastly underdeveloped compared to his old world. However, the reason for this is not far-fetched, as the lack of technological advancement is because of magic. In his old world, they had a little force called Ki, which was used by practitioners to strengthen their bodies and weapons through rigorous training. His present world has a similar force called mana. Unlike Ki, it exists only inside a person. Arthur is still in the middle of his studies when Alice interrupts him. In fact, he had started working out his mana magic before Alice comes in and takes him out to change his diaper. Arthur is exasperated. All he wants to do is stay at his studies all day and learn more, but his mother keeps ruining things for him. If only she knew who he was and what he was in his other world. It's been over 2 years, and Alice's conclusion of Arthur is that he is the best baby one could have. Arthur, on his part, is growing and is trying his best to fit in as the baby his mother wants and the brave man his father desires. However, none of them have been able to account for his studious personality. She thinks she will be strict with him so he will not get into trouble in the future. However, she's not going to be too hard on him since he is her son anyway. His father had tried to teach him how to fight when he had not even started crawling, so she could definitely not rely on him. She is convinced that he might grow up to become an adventurer like his father. Alice, however, will not have him stress over it. She's keen on giving him motherly care and maximum love. Ray, on the other hand, loves to take him out and teach him new things a man ought to know. Arthur is always fascinated, as it's always depicted in his face that his study time and his playtime with Ray are the best for him so far. While Alice is in her thoughts, Arthur watches his father from the window out of boredom, since he had not been to the study for the past 2 years. His father has been his major focus of delight through all the times that he had been away from the study. His mother had always prevented him. His father, Ray, is trying to conjure magic with his chants. He eventually does this, breaking large pieces of stones, hence fascinating Arthur, who wants to keep watching so he can also try it out. His mother had interrupted his trial to summon his mana in the past few years, and since then, he had not had the chance to try it again, as he was not even allowed into the study. Alice believes he's still young and should not expose himself to adult activities. He is only 4, and so he should be patient and obedient to his parents. That is his major obligation as far as Alice is concerned. Arthur, on the other hand, thinks differently. He lives like an adult because he has lived like one before, and he was high in spirit for trying out new things. Irrespective of what his mother says or thinks, Ray, on the other hand, is supportive and will do anything to train his little boy to be as brave as him. Alice is always insecure about Ray's habit of trying to expose Arthur to things. She sees it as dangerous and always complains that he is only 4. Unknown to Alice, Arthur is gathering knowledge from study and the little training he gets from his father to create his own magic, and it's only a matter of time before it is evinced. Arthur already understands the basic things about the world that he resides in, and the time he uses in the study is enough to deduce all the techniques required to propel mana. After watching his father for a while and seeing him perform magic, he deduces from his studies that he is an augmenter. He thinks about himself and the magic he is cooking. What will be the result? Will it work out? What will he look like when his mana core awakens? All these rhetorical questions can only be answered by how he depicts his study in his magic. Later that day, he tries to steal his way into the study room, but his mother, as usual, would not let him. She required him to take a nap, as it was nap time already, and he was not supposed to be in the study. He quickly makes a switch, which makes him appear very cute, with his eyeball glaring blissfully and almost tearing up. He begs to be allowed into the study for just a little while. His mother, who cannot help his cute approach, eventually succumbs reluctantly and angrily too, with mixed emotions. She allows him into the study, but gives him the condition that it must be a very brief visit. Arthur nods in satisfaction and dashes into the study. Art had spent the last 2 years moving the tens of thousands of tiny fragments of mana inside his body and gathering them together near his solar plexus. He tries it again in the study room. His mother, on the other hand, has gone out to check on his father, who's still meddling with his magic outside the apartment. Suddenly, an explosion happens in the apartment, tearing down a whole segment of the house. This calls the attention of both Ray and his wife. Ray is dumbfounded, while all Alice can think of is Arthur. Ray charges quickly for the house to get Arthur out, only to find out something entirely different from his expectations. After the explosion, Arthur's parents are outside, after which his mother realizes that he is not with them. He's apparently inside the house where the explosion happened. His father rushes into the apartment to get him, but is rather surprised at what he sees. Arthur is meditating in the air without a single injury. His father expresses maximum joy, which draws the attention of his mother. Arthur in his meditation sees trees and serenity until he's jolted into reality and the destruction of the apartment. He never knew his meditation had destroyed the house until he opened his eyes to see the havoc his magic had caused. However, he's only delighted at the turnout of things. Even Alice could not say a word. She just stands in front of her son and by her husband's side, dumbfounded at the miracle their son had performed. For the previous few years, alongside his mother, enlightening him on how to read and write, he has been learning the basics of mana manipulation and augmentation. He begins practice with his father, after which he goes into his room to meditate. Alice no longer complains about his training with his father after witnessing the explosion and recording that Arthur's trial to create magic led to it. As long as he is by her side, he can get all the training he wants from his father. She has no problem with it. His meditation is always based on what he has been reading. In his present world, strength is measured by the color of one's mana core. The mana core starts off black, due to the body's blood and other impurities mixing with the mana particles, forming the mana core. The mana core becomes more pure as the impurities are filtered out over time. Arthur is excited that he has gained a lot over time, and he will soon get an avenue to practice all that he has been learning. It is in the middle of his studies that his mother interrupts him again. This time she summons him to the table for dinner. Arthur's not ready to eat dinner. All he wants to do is propel magic, and that Alice has ruined. He had no choice, apparently, than to report at dinner. Arthur curses as he goes to join them for dinner. As they eat, everyone thinks about different things, while Ray lets his thoughts of getting Arthur a proper mentor out. Arthur was surprised at this. Alice thinks about what her husband has said, after which she throws a tantrum immediately. Alice vehemently kicks against Ray's thought of getting Arthur a proper teacher. Is he suddenly incapable? What does Arthur need a teacher for? Does he have to leave her side? What is Ray's problem? All of this she rants about. She rejects that because he is only 4. Also, Ray should take the responsibility of training him. After all, he is Ray's son. They keep arguing and opposing each other. The moment Ray gives a point, Alice counters it, and whenever Alice does the same, Ray trashes her opinion. This continued for a while. Arthur remains silent. Ray and Alice argue for a long time, and instead of eating their meal, they try to deliberate on Arthur's life and his magic. Ray explains that he was surprised at Arthur's exploit at 4, and he needs to exploit more with proper training. Alice, on the other hand, kicks against this because she will not have her son leave home for a faraway country just to improve his mantra. That will never happen. Ray, however, guarantees his safety, but it all proves abortive as they argue for a long time. Art bangs the table suddenly to stop them and secure their attention. Ray gives him a chance to also decide what he wants. Arthur was surprised at the fact that he needed to have a say in this. What would he say? Should he side with his mother? Should he just decline? Should he accept? All these run through his mind as he finally reaches a conclusion. His conclusion, however, is pleasing, as it took him time to even let his thoughts out. To their surprise, he inquires if they can all go to Zyra City together. They are all happy with his wisdom as they never thought of going with him. His mother is delighted that she can at least have him by her side with all the fierce training that he'll be given. Alice can always interrupt his studies and also reduce his stress when the need arises. Ray, on the other hand, is only delighted at his son's approach to wisdom. They begin their preparation for the 3-week journey. Arthur was surprised that preparations began in earnest without any delay. Later that night, Art tries to study, but his mother orders him to bed in preparation for the journey tomorrow. They will be heading out very early, so he needs to rest. He gets to know that they will be traveling with his parents' longtime friend as he eventually retires to bed. They had begun their journey for the past few days, and they were still on their way to Zyra City. Art's father and his friends engage in different conversations that project life into their movement. Art is exhausted from the journey and only keeps up with his studies and interactions. Alice, on the other hand, remains quiet as she seems uninterested in any conversation at the time. Ray's friends are eager to test Art's abilities because his father had bragged about his powerful exploits. Art is then challenged to a combat so as to test out his abilities and what he has gained so far from studying and training. They engage in intense combat as they splash, dash, slide, trip, fall, and wade techniques. Their combat becomes more intense as Arthur will not back down. His personality of exploring as an adult is all over him. He wanted to show that all he had learned. It's apparently time for him to put it into practice. He knows quite well that the mini-battle is not his to win, but it is his to take charge of. Arthur uses one of his skills that he had studied, which is Newton's third law of motion, which states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. This law eventually took place, but it was vice versa for Art as he lands on his back slightly injured. Ray's friend is scolded for being too hard on the young boy. However, he admires Art's technique and approaches to attacks, and he is ready to learn from him so as to merge knowledge. Several days had passed since they began their journey to Xyrus City. Also during the period, Art's birthday passed. However, Art improves in his training with the assistance of Adam, Helen, and his father. Jasmine, on his part, has picked out a lot of techniques from Art. As they journey on, his father's teammates begin to joke to Art about Ray, his father, and how he had been with them for the past few years. They relate to Art now that he had always caused trouble, and also pestered their well-being. They laugh and make jokes about it until they realize that Art's attention has shifted. However, Art is unable to pay attention to their stories as he notices his mother clutching her fist. He inquires to her well-being, in which she affirms, and so he continues with his business. Suddenly an attack is orchestrated on them, and it is at this time that they deduce that they have been surrounded. They are not only surrounded by unknown beings, it's also almost certain that they might all be eliminated if something is not done. They brace themselves and get ready for a fierce battle. These attackers are no match for their magic, but their weapons and numbers cannot be ignored. It is either they kill or they get killed. While they prepare to face the situation, the mages and their master show their faces. The master of the rebels instructs his men to eliminate all of them, leaving only the women and the child alive without any traces of injury. Moreover, from the use of their words and their actions, they appear as human traitors. It was at this point in time that they all knew that they had to take charge of the battle, as they couldn't afford to be traded. While the threat and attack becomes fierce, Alice tries very hard to protect her son. The combat increases with more coercion. They slash through things and destroy materials during the combat. However, Arthur's family seem to have the upper hand. Unfortunately, one of them gets whipped as Arthur's attention shifts to where the incident happened. He notices that she is at a disadvantage in her opponent's range. He is unsure as to helping her because she's a fighter and she apparently has more experience. He also knows that the mage has more advantage than him, and he probably would not want to fight a mage with his size and body texture as a child. Unfortunately, his father sustains an injury that could end him any minute from that time. He bleeds profusely from his mouth, which scares Arthur. Arthur cries to Alice for healing, as he is aware that his mother possesses a healing power. His father affirms that he's fine and his injury is not life-threatening. He says if she uses her healing power, they will go after her and it will be a whole lot trying to protect both his wife and child. His father instructs him to take her down the trail they came from and not stop. He refuses to leave, after which he is cajoled and told to protect his mother and the baby she carries. The baby she carries? Arthur was surprised as he seemed to be hearing this for the first time. How did his father not inform him about his mother's state? That is probably the reason for her sudden change in behavior during the journey. She was always quiet and she never really had a conversation with any of them. It was only Ray who knew the reason for all of this all along. Little Arthur feels betrayed but is immediately comforted by Ray as he explains things to him. Arthur is shocked to hear of his mother's pregnancy and his father planned to tell him when they arrive at Xyrus. Arthur assures his father to protect his mother. His mother eventually heals his father, which infuriates the rebels. They immediately change their targets and head for Alice. He quickly leads his mother away from the evil men. One of the mages gives them a hot chase as Arthur successfully takes down one of them. He uses his mana to protect himself and his mother. They did not have the intention of seizing both Arthur and his mother or even any woman amongst them. But because Arthur's mother had exhibited her magic in healing her husband, they decided to go after her unnecessarily, probably because they thought she would be useful with her magic. They also want to stop her from healing people they are bent on eliminating. Arthur had to save his mother because he had promised his father to do so. During the escape, they sustained so many bruises and injuries. Arthur keeps shielding his mother from attacks with the use of his mana. Where it seems like his mother is lagging behind, he makes use of his magic to boost them both and protect her. However, they eventually get safe in the end. Arthur takes his mother far away on their heels, escaping the trouble from the human traitors, hence keeping to the promise he made to his father. Arthur has passed out from falling off a cliff with his mother earlier and is reminiscing about his supposed life as a king. In the reminiscence, he is welcomed to the palace, where there are problems like decreasing birth rates and limited resources. He sees his palace again and feels like a king as it had been in his past. Arthur comes from a place where wars were replaced by duels and armies by a king. Arthur, whose name is also Grey in the illusion, is one of the kings. He says he is resigning and that he needs to go back to Ashbur to see his loved ones. He wakes up only to find that he has fallen off a cliff. He wakes up to not find his mother by his side. There are all sorts of injuries on his body that he probably sustained from the human traffickers. He removed the knife that was pierced through his body and stood at his feet to find an answer to all of his riddles. A voice forms in his head asking if he's awake. He was unsure as to if it was a corpse or his mother's voice. The voice inquires if he's fine while he forms up imaginary thoughts in his head. It could not possibly be his mother. However, he's unable to fathom if she is dead or alive, or even if she had located his father. This continues for a while until Arthur thinks about his father and mother. Are they fine? Did they go to Zyra safely? He inquires of the voice as to what path he should take from there. The voice tells him to depart immediately so as to be safe. Arthur seems to be very worried because he does not know how his friends and family are faring, and he's lost and far away from them or maybe even their corpses. His body condition improves gradually as the aches and inconveniences decrease. He is surprised as to who saved him from falling, how the person got to know, or the kind of magic or even the reason for it. The more he tries to get an explanation, the more the question increases. He jumps off the surface into a river to have a quick shower, after which he comes out to continue his journey. He's probably near the elves' domain from his study of maps. He needed to get back to his parents with his mother pregnant. This can be possible only if they are still alive. He slides through a rock into a cave, only to meet a scary creature who affirms that he has been looking forward to their meeting. It will take a while for her to open a dimensional rift strong enough to transport Arthur home, as she means no harm. She gives him special plants to nourish him until he is able to return home. Arthur expresses gratitude. He's reminded of his parents, after which he breaks out of it almost immediately. It appears that the scary figure is the female voice that has been speaking to him. She introduces herself as Sylvia. He asks other questions like, where is the place they are in? Why is she alone? Where did she come from, and how did she save him? She explains everything to him in detail. She states that they were in a narrow zone that rests between the Beast Glades and the forest of Elshire. No one knows the place because she has been warding off anyone who comes close. Although those cases are rare in the first place, as no one would want to come close at free will. She tells him that he is the first to enter into the domain. And as to why she is lonely, she explains that she is there alone because she apparently has no one left to be with. She states that she has too many enemies who desperately wish for what she possesses. She explains that her last battle with her enemies before she was able to escape left her with the wound that Arthur sees. However, she saved him because she was moved by his courage and sacrifice, or perhaps because of her loneliness. Arthur seems satisfied as she excuses him for the night. She tells him that his family and friends are safe. This made Arthur very delighted and happy. He feels rather assured that he does not need to overthink about their well-being. Did you enjoy this recap? If you did, kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel, so we can bring you the recap of the next chapters of this exciting manga series. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.